Welcome to week 3 in our True Life Teacher Confessions series. This week's submission said, "Help! I teach a course with a high stakes test that I do not care about at all, but I need to care about it. How can I make myself care?" And then another teacher asked, "What assessments can I use daily and weekly to assess students' understanding and prepare them for state testing that's quick and auto-graded because I don't have time to do anything else on my plate?" Listen, I have been there in both of these situations, okay? I've taught Biology 1, which in my state has an EOC course, and that EOC is 20% of the student's final grade in the course. So that does affect them and whether or not they can pass the class. But even more than that, our averages and our pass rates very much mattered to my admin. And I've also taught AP Biology, where the pass rates really mattered to my students and their parents. And honestly, for me, my ego, it mattered to me because I just wanted to know that I felt like I'd done a good job and their test scores proved that. So there are times that I have cared about these exams, times that I haven't. And so I get it. And that's why we're going to talk today about how to make yourself care when you don't care about a high stakes test that you have. And we're going to get all into it together. So let's do it. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Okay, I have 3 things for you today about this topic of high stakes tests. I teach this course. How do I make myself care about this? My first point I want to make to you is I want to give you permission to not care as much as other stakeholders do. I want to give you permission to not care as much as your principal cares, or maybe your coworkers care, or maybe your students or your students' parents or guardians. You don't necessarily have to care as much as they do about this. You can be more chill about this, okay? Than maybe they are. There are going to be things that other people care about more than we do. For example, I have so many past honor students that care so much about getting the highest A possible, and I don't care about them getting the highest A possible. I care about their grade reflecting what they know and what they understand and what they can do. And so they care more about that than I do, and that's okay. So first, I'm giving you permission to not care as much as you feel like you need to. I felt like the teacher who submitted that confession about not caring was feeling really guilty, and I think it's okay to not care as much. Now, my second point I want to make is I want to give you an opportunity to consider this question, do you need to care more? For instance, are your students doing okay with what you're doing right now? Are the pass rates good? Are they doing well? Do you feel like it's a good reflection of their understanding? And if that's the case, then why do you feel like you need to care more? I think it's okay not to if what you're already doing is working. Does that make sense? You don't need to just muster up a frenetic, high intensity caring about something just because that's how your admin feel. If what you're doing is working, then great, keep on keeping on. Now, if you do need to care more because the scores really do matter and your scores aren't that stellar, or your admin has told you your job's on the line if you don't get your scores up, or maybe you want your scores up so then your admin told you, hey, if you get your Biology 1 EOC scores up, then you can teach AP Bio. If that's the case, then that's where the third and final point comes in. That's my actual recommendations for you practically. But I just felt like I had to start off by giving you that permission not to care and to question, do I actually need to care more? So if you're no, I need to care more because I'm not putting as much effort in as I need to and it's affecting my students and blah, 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 my number one recommendation for you is to build exam prep into your regular classroom rhythms so that it becomes habitual. It can go on in the background without you having to put a lot of extra energy into it. You're not having to muster up energy to care about it or to make sure you insert it into real time, because through your preparation, you've made sure that that exam review has been built in. I find doing this is really beneficial too, because if you're like me, you might constantly feel this weight on you of like, oh, I need to be doing more for the EOC. Oh, I need to be doing more for the AP exam. But then you're still not making time for it just because there's so much else going on. And then you're just carrying this burden all year long of like not doing enough. So I have found that the best way to handle these high stakes tests, like they're coming, the date that it's going to be, is to go ahead and on the front end, build in the review into your rhythms, okay? Here's a few ways I recommend doing that. One would be FRQ Fridays. I know a lot of AP teachers do it and find it effective. If you have a 90-minute class period, you're going to spend like maybe 30 minutes on this. So what that looks like is you're going to take released FRQ, free response questions from past exams, past practice tests, whatever. And you're going to always do one on a Friday. It's going to become part of your rhythm. So instead of your traditional primetime bell ringer on Friday, you're going to do an FRQ. I personally highly recommend, I think this is one of the best things I did as an AP bio teacher and as an EOC teacher at that time, but especially the AP bio exam, is I always did timed tests. So you do the math and you figure out for this type of question, how much time should they spend on it so they would have time for all the other questions. Because especially if you teach an AP course, some of the questions are longer, they have more sections, others are a little bit shorter, and give them that amount of time. All of my students in my AP bio class said that they came out of the exam and they felt like they had plenty of time to do it because I had drilled them in the pace to work. And I remember going into the National AP Bio Teacher Facebook group after the exam and all these teachers saying that all of their students were freaking out because they didn't have enough time, they didn't get to finish, it was so long this year, yada, yada, yada. So I think doing the timed question is really helpful. And then again, you build in time that like, we're going to go over this, whatever. So treat especially if you have a 50-minute class period, treat your Fridays as like a half day. So when you're making your lesson plans for the week, you're planning for 4.5 days because half of your class period on Friday is going to be spent doing this FRQ Friday. And that is a worthwhile use of your time. I think making that a rhythm, no matter what you're doing, you're going to stop and do FRQ Friday. That'll provide so much relief going into the exam, knowing you spent so much time working on FRQs. Adjacent to this, but more of a daily thing, would be bell ringer test prep questions. So I personally like to write my bell ringers based on what we've learned the previous day. I really use it as a daily formative assessment tool so I can kind of check in with students, know where they're at. That's how I like to use it. But an alternative option is to make your bell ringers test prep questions. So this could be your one thing this summer. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out episode 185. And what you could do is you could take some time this summer. I genuinely don't think it would be that long if you're using released questions, which I highly recommend. Like, don't reinvent the wheel writing all these questions. I think it's so good to take the materials that the test writers have given you, and that's what you practice with students so that they get used to their language. I think that's very important. But maybe it's taking like 5 multiple choice or 3 multiple choice a day and plugging those into Google Forms so that it'll auto grade for you super easily, not adding more grading to your plate. And then that's something we do. You could also, if you're like me and you're obsessed with doing your primetime bell ringers the way you've always done them, the way It's a Rocket Science does them, you can make these test prep question type activities as like exit tickets. Make a bunch of them this summer, maybe not necessarily one for every day. If you have 180 school days, maybe you're going to make 100 of these and have them in Google Forms. And so that way, any day that you have like 5 minutes left in class, you throw one of these up as an exit ticket and they get to try to do them. And it could be an opportunity for, extra credit or replace a primetime grade based on what they get. So that gives them a little bit of stakes in it, but it doesn't put a lot of pressure on you grading. Okay, that's another way you can build in this rhythm. I also recommend, if you are able, plan on doing once per quarter review days for the high stakes test. So not just like your end of unit review days, but like once per quarter. So that gives you 4 times a year. You're blocking off a day and you're saying, okay, we're just going to review for the EOC on this day or just do review for the AP exam this day. I love to do something like this when it's Spirit Week. And so we're not going to be extremely productive anyway in class because the kids are all in crazy costumes and they have a pep rally and a fundraiser and a dance after school. Like, it's too crazy. That's a great time to build in a review day, knowing like it's already going to be chaotic. I'm not going to get through new material, but let's like use this time that they're still with me for an hour productively. And let's review a little for the high stakes test. Again, all of this review, I'm telling you, use released content from College Board or from your state or whatever, for whatever the test is. I genuinely think that's one of the reasons that my students have always been really successful on standardized tests. I would also build in a 2-week buffer for review before the actual exam date. I think that's really helpful. Most likely you might eat into that a little bit if other things come up, but then you might still have 1 week to review. And I think that's great too. But I think using this summer to build in to say like, okay, I'm going to collect all the FRQs for FRQ Fridays. And then we're going to grade those together. So I'm not grading these after school. We're going to grade these together. So I'm not spending time grading them. And part of the learning process is grading them together. I remember that from taking AP Chem when I was in high school. Like I learned so much from hearing the teacher's thought process as we explained how to grade these and how an AP reader would grade them. Again, use the summer to make some test prep questions in Google Forms that'll auto grade for you so you don't have to add that to your plate. Look at the calendar and pencil in your once per quarter review days. Pencil in as you're making your lesson plans a 2-week buffer before the exam. Okay, and the last thing I recommend doing in advance, because again, we're going to build all this in advance and it's going to already just be in the rhythm of our class, is if you're able, make some sort of exam prep pack that you can give students at the beginning of the year and they can be working on it independently. And you can say, hey, I'm going to check pieces of it at each unit test maybe. Like I want to check a few pages at a time. Or you're going to give them a schedule of like, hey, if you're going to be working on this, I recommend this is kind of the pace you take, something like that. And maybe it's something you grade for completion. Maybe it's something you grade for accuracy on exam day. Maybe it's just something that you say, hey, this is for you. And you can make the choice of whether or not you're going to do it or not to prep. But like that is a gift you can give your students too. And again, it's something you can do in advance that'll really serve your students and be like a worthwhile use of your time. So hopefully these practical ideas are helpful for you. Again, I don't think you have to care more about this just because other people care about it. This is permission to not care as much. But if you're like, I need to like try a little harder, but my heart's not in it, I highly recommend these strategies. Again, I've had pretty successful results using these things. I also hate reviewing. You can listen to episode 72 for my best review strategies though that help make review as painless as possible. But again, I did do this because I cared about my ego and like I cared about the past results for myself and like wanting to do well more than I wasn't as altruistic and caring about it as I should have been. But I did build in a lot of this and I had really great success. So for like our EOC, I had approximately 300 students as my sample size. When I was at that school, I had a 96% pass rate for my non-honor students, 100% pass rate for my honors students. My average score was 90%. And then when I taught AP Biology, I had an 80% pass rate. So I do think the building in of these rhythms is really successful. I think that's part of it. And then I also think the packet strategy I use is a huge part of my success too. I talk about that in episode 60, so you can check that out. I'll link it in the show notes. But again, I think a big part of it is building in these rhythms. So I highly recommend it. Today's take-home challenge for you is receive my permission to not care as much. Consider my question of, do I need to care more about this because of my scores or because of my job or because of what my admin are saying? And then lastly, take some of those ideas to build review prep into your rhythms for next school year. Do it now. And if you do it now, it's something that you're not going to have to really put any effort into during the year. It's going to be so low lift going forward. Now, I referenced a couple of old podcast episodes. You can find those in the show notes at itsonrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 188. And if you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you would do that. Let's say this. It's your turn today to leave a review if you teach a course with a high stakes test at the end of it. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.